mixed feelings here as we get to the end of the NFL season. Our good friend Eric from ETOF21 Sports has been with us. This is 3 years in a row, I think, every single game. Every single NFL game we have talked about, right? I think so. All the way through, each and every week. Some shows will do their few best bets, but that's not us. We'll go through every single game. We'll tell you what we think is going to happen, positives, negatives, how we're going to dive into each of those games. So, Eric, now it's time to talk about the big one. It is time to talk about the Super Bowl this weekend with the Chiefs and the Eagles. And, man, first and foremost, thank you again for all the hard work. It's always at this point of the year, like I said, it's nice because football, for people like us who seriously gamble and put a lot of time and effort into NFL preparation, there's really nothing like that. Like how much prep it takes to get ready for an NFL weekend, watching all the games, rewatching, reading through stuff, advanced box scores. So when it's over, there is a little bit of okay, it's time for a sort of a break, right? It's nice to have a little bit of time off, but then at the same time, man, I miss those Sundays when you kick back and you watch a football. There's just nothing like a football Sunday.
I really was lost on Sunday. I really had no
last
idea
week, right?
Yeah, I had no idea at all what to do. I was like perplexed. I was like, oh my God, I remember this feeling of actually being able to get stuff done. And
it's weird because you forget, you know, when football season's going, you forget what you do when it's not on anymore, right? It's like, what do I do on these Sundays now when there's no football? And it was like, you're right. It's such a weird feeling. So we will have football this weekend on Sunday, but then that will be it. And on this show, you'll hear us transition, start talking a lot more NBA. As Eric and I are recording on Wednesday night, there was a fun trade in the NBA for the Lakers and feel like some positivity in Lakerland. So good things to talk about there. And we'll talk some college basketball too. Eric and I both host shows for Better Than Vegas every week, talking NBA and college basketball. So we'll bring some of that conversation over here. But Eric, we have a ton to discuss. This is so much fun. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, the Super Bowl was really like the only game that had all of the props like they do now. Nowadays, you can play a lot of these props and in-game stuff in many games, but there's still nothing like the Super Bowl when you dive into the lists and list of props for every single player, national anthem, halftime show, you name it, they've got it. You can find a way to play it in this game. So we'll dive into the game. We'll do our analysis and talk about, you know, some of the major points. And then at the end, let's get into some of our plays and the props and things that we're looking at. And then one year, Eric, I want to make sure that one year you and I make a wager on every single prop under. 1 year, we're going to do it. And just under every single prop. Because if you did it, you'd hit more years than not. This is something that you and I joke about at the beginning of every year when we do the future wagers, right? Or props that we're looking at season-wide. If you just took everyone's props and went under based on injuries and all the things that happen throughout the year, scheme changes, players that either get benched or move up and down the depth chart, it's always better to go under. It's not something that a lot of people want to play, right? Nobody likes playing an under prop and sitting there.
I mean, I'm thinking back at it right now. The only overs I played in player props for the whole season, like for the duration, was Evan Ingram, just because they're insanely priced so low.
Yep.
And I think the only one I lost was Dalvin Cook rushing yards over. I mean, and
that barely got there, right?
I had the majority of stuff under, so
it's always that way. It's not sexy to play the under, but there's so many variables in order to get over in all of these particular props. So we dive in to the Chiefs and the Eagles. We have the Eagles right now as a -1.5 point favorite in this game. And we're looking over at Betfred Sportsbook at the betting line. The over-under is 51. Now, we'll set the game up. It's the first Super Bowl between two black starting quarterbacks. We have the youngest combined age between starting quarterbacks in Super Bowl history with Patrick Mahomes and with Hurts. We have the first brothers to face off in a Super Bowl with the Kelsey brothers. We have the head coach from the Chiefs, Coach Andy Reid, against his former team with the Eagles. The number one scoring team in the AFC versus the number one scoring team in the NFC. These are the top two teams in the league in sacks, so they can both put pressure on the quarterback. This is only the 8th time since the playoffs were expanded back in 1990 that we actually have both number one seeds, and it's only the 7th time with a spread of less than 3. 2.5 points or shorter in the game. Now, it's kind of the overall setup on this one. Eric, we head to the Eagles, who 2 playoff wins. They've come by a combined 69-14. Shout out to their right tackle, Lane Johnson. He had a torn adductor. He's kind of one of the unofficial leaders of that team, and he had that injury back on Christmas. It was a groin strain, and he put off surgery so he could come back and play in the playoffs. He missed the final 2 games of the regular season, comes back from the playoffs. He's one of only 8 guys on the team from the Super Bowl team back in 2017. What's nice, he was able to sit out the whole fourth quarter against San Francisco a couple weeks back because they were up big. They had all 22 regular starters healthy in the conference championship game, did the Philadelphia Eagles. So think about that. They were completely healthy. The 49ers, we know they weren't healthy. We saw what the 49ers were dealing with. The Chiefs, we know they weren't healthy. They were losing wide receivers all throughout the game. And the Bengals were missing 3 offensive line starters. And then you've got the Eagles, who had all 22 regular season starters healthy. That offense went 11 plays, 66 yards, in 5 minutes on the opening drive to score a touchdown and go up by 7. Now, they did benefit from a big 4th down completion that should not have been ruled a catch, and they hurried up so that way Kyle Shanahan couldn't challenge. They ran to the line and snapped the ball quickly. 2 plays later, they score a touchdown. Following that, they weren't all that sharp offensively. The next 3 drives, they went 3 and out, 4 and out, 3 and out, only combined 13 yards on 10 plays on those 3 drives. They only had 269 total yards of offense, 3.8 yards per play on 10 total drives, but the running game was really strong for them. They didn't really need to throw the ball all that much, Eric. They finished with 148 yards rushing, 44 rushing attempts. A lot of that was late when they were running out the clock. They ended up with 15 more minutes of time of possession, but 90 seconds left to go in the half. It's a tie game at 7-7. Going into halftime, they're down 21-7. The Eagles score 14 points in the span of 1 minute and 20 seconds. And that was it for a 49ers team that couldn't throw the ball at that point. They weren't going to be able to come back from like a double-digit deficit. They needed to stay in that game. Talk to us a little bit about some of the major points that you're seeing with these sides.
So first of all, as you know, I coach kids. I have to do my Jalen Hurts rap, okay? We live in a world right now where all these kids, if they don't get what they want, like playing time, they look to leave. If you just look at this Jalen Hurts story, 4-star recruit, Lane Kiffin recruited him. Nick Saban didn't even go to his house for the recruiting trip. Few people know this. Goes to Alabama, becomes their starting quarterback, first one in 30 some odd years to be a freshman starter, leads them to the national championship game, scores the go-ahead touchdown with 2-3 minutes left. And that's the game where Lawrence hit Renfro with a couple seconds left to win it. So not really his fault they lost the game. He put him in the position. He got the game-winning touchdown on his legs. Next year, what happens? What's the big change at Alabama? Lane Kiffin. Right? No, Kiffin leaves to be the quarter. Kiffin leaves. So
and that was his guy.
And Kiffin likes the mobile quarterback. Kiffin's more of a new guy, more of an open-up guy, more, you know what I mean? And then Stark comes in. Stark and Saban don't like mobile quarterbacks. They like the pocket passer, what Tua is.
Yep.
They lead him to the national championship game. Now, everyone's all narrative is this. Oh, Tua played great in the second half. He led him to the title. But the thing is this. If you look at that game, when he played in the second half, his completion percentage was less than 58 yards. He had 111 yards passing. 40 of them came on that touchdown to win it. So, it's a little narrative grace that Tua played this great game, where if you just dive into the numbers, really not that good in the second half. Then the following season, he could have transferred, but he honors his commitment, doubles up on his class load so he can transfer early, so he can graduate early and leaves. End of the year, Tua gets hurt. He comes in. He wins the SEC championship game for them. The roles were reversed. He comes in, leads them to the SEC championship game. National championship game, they're going back. Who are you going to start? Tua Hurts. They start with Tua. They get absolutely boat raced by Clemson in the national championship game. Then goes to Oklahoma, breaks every single record there, gets drafted by the Eagles. These guys in the offensive line Kelsey, Lane Johnson, as you mentioned, they didn't even acknowledge him. They thought the pick was awful. Carson Wentz was their guy. Peterson didn't acknowledge him, and he just shut up and he just did work. I mean, that's
and I will say, I never thought he was going to be a starting NFL quarterback either coming out. I didn't think I thought he was a good leader and had some of those intangibles. I didn't know if he was a good enough like thrower of the ball, but it's just a combination of everything, right? It's the package that he can throw. He's improved. He works hard. He can run. He's a good leader. He inspires guys. You put it all together, and there's just a lot of positives that the guy has, man.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this should be the story. Like, I remember last year, Joe Burrow this, Joe Burrow that, Joe Burrow this. That story I just told, you're not hearing anyone in the media talk about.
No.
In terms of the game, I really felt like Kyle Shanahan just kind of rolled over.
Oh, yeah, he did.
Just kind of rolled over. I really wasn't that impressed with the game plan. You got to have something going on. Jimmy G should have been activated just because you have to have a contingency. If what's his
just in case what happened, just in case, like you said, you have to have a third guy back there just in case in that game.
Yeah, just in case. Because if you know Johnson can't throw,
why does you can't even go to him?
Yeah, you have to have a contingency plan. You have to run the Wildcat something. And this is what Shanahan is showing to us. Great planner, great schemer, great everything. But if something goes awry, he can't do anything. I mean, he's blown 2 double-digit leads. They're up 20-10 against the Chiefs a couple years ago when the Chiefs
in the Rams game last year too. They could have won.
Yep, Rams game, and then also 28-3 against the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
He gets tight. Also, he gets cute. He's one of those really great play callers. But when it comes to decision making, like example, compare him to Sirianni. Sirianni went for it 4th down all the time throughout the year. They were 3 for 3 on 4th down. They were an incredible team when it comes to quarterback sneaks. The 49ers could do exactly what the Eagles do on quarterback sneaks. The 49ers have a great running game and a running scheme, and they're super creative. The first 2 times the Eagles completed a 4th down in the game against the 49ers, they were on drives that eventually became touchdowns. So think about that. If they don't go for it on those 2 4th downs, if they just punt, that wipes 14 points off the board right there.
Yep. In terms of the other game, look, I know people are going to talk about the officiating, this, that, and the other thing. I think the big thing was that Spagnuolo brought pressure. Jones and everybody were able to get to Burrow, knock him off key, and then Mahomes did enough. Kelsey is obviously a little bit more banged up than we all realize. They were lining him strictly outside because they didn't want to take hits, and there was a couple times when he would do that curl route, he would just pitch it. Is that a design where Reed's trying to get fancy, or are they hiding Kelsey because they don't want him to take that hit to that back? That's something that kind of stood out to me. Snead went down with an injury with a concussion. We still don't know if he's going to play or not. I'd like to assume he's going to be playing, and rightfully so, everyone's so protective with these concussions. But when I look at the game, my big thing is this. I look at the game, I look at the Eagles defensive line against the Chiefs offensive line. Eagles, most sacks by far in the NFL, able to get home against the 49ers quarterback, and the 49ers quarterback Johnson or Purdy, whoever back there. That offensive line in my rankings is rated higher than the Chiefs.
They were one of the best. They were one of the best.
At 18 on my rankings. So I think that they're going to be able to get home against Mahomes. And now this is going to put pressure on Mahomes and that ankle injury. We don't really know how is he going to be able to move? What is he going to look like movement wise? I think the big thing we need to look at in this game is when the active list comes out Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, if we see an abundance of tight ends active for the Chiefs, I think this is going to be a heavy Pacheco game, and they're really going to lean on that run, because we have to remember Andy Reid's been in this situation before a couple years ago when they played against the Bucs, and the Bucks D line was just living in that backfield. So is Reed going to have, you know what I mean? Is it going to be a little bit more of a tight end centric offense where they're going to have 2 tight ends staying back and just be rolling 2 wide receivers out, one of which being Kelsey? Because we need to remember Tony, Juju, Hardman, et cetera, all those guys are hurt.
Yep.
So I really
and Kelsey was even like, but all 3 of those guys and Kelsey had a back injury too. So all of them banged up plus Mahomes. So you're right. I think that could be something they try to lean on.
Like we need to kind of be monitoring, because that's going to kind of lead the game. On the Eagles side, I just don't know. When we look at it, they really struggle against number 1 wide receivers, DVOA, AJ Brown. They struggle in the slot, Devontae Smith, middle of the road against the tight end, and really struggle defending the run. I just don't know what Spagnuolo is going to do to limit this attack. Now, I think one of the big thing is you mentioned it, Johnson's hurt. Is Johnson going to be able to keep up throughout the whole game against Johnson, against the Greek kid, George K, whose name I can't pronounce?
Jones, Clark.
Are they going to be able to keep up? Also, how is Hurts going to look? Hurts was a little off. I think Hurts is still a little bit
down the field. He's only 3 for 10 throwing down the field since his injury. Now, that's a small sample size, right? And you'd expect there to be a little bit of rust, but he was very accurate down the field through a lot of the year. Since he seemed like he is, again, nobody wants to get hit, but he's been a little tentative running and taking hits. He hasn't had to do much, though, the last couple of weeks, right? So it's hard to gauge, because why are you scoring 50 points if you don't have to? And why are you putting a bunch of stuff out there on film that you don't need when you've already got these games wrapped up?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, I can't really add anything to that, because if they're so far ahead, there's no real thing. Betting this game for me is pretty stress-free, because I have the Eagles 30-1 and I have the
You're in great shape.
I'm in great shape. But I really think the things that are going to be the telling sign to me watching the game beforehand, like I mentioned, the tight end situation for the Chiefs. What is Willie Snead's health? Because if Snead isn't there, they're going to be relying an awful lot on Joshua Williams. And how good does Lane Johnson look getting off and being able to protect? Is he able to slow down Jones? Because if I'm Spagnuolo, I'm putting Jones over Johnson every single time until, you know what I mean? I'm gonna look to exploit that. I'm not going to have him on the other side. And how does Hurts look when throwing? That are going to be the 4 things that are kind of the puzzle maker, if you will, for me.
Variables as you're looking at the game.
No, I mean, you know me well enough. I always talk about trenches. I locked in the Eagles right away, just because I think they have a huge advantage on both sides. I think they're going to be able to get to Mahomes. I think they're going to be able to protect Hurts. And when you look at it, they are bottom 3 defending Brown, Smith, and Sanders, those 3 positions. They're bottom 3 defending those positions. How are they going to be able to get stops? What are they going to do to get the Eagles off center? Now,
it feels like
played a close game, and they do get like the deer in the headlights look like that I could see that scenario set out.
Mm-hmm.
Eagles really haven't been battle tested, and everyone's making a lot about their schedule. Well, you know, you play. They don't make this isn't college football. You don't
pick who you schedule, right? Yeah, you're not choosing to schedule these games. It's just, and they've beat the crap out of. It's not like they've just gotten by these teams either, right? Like they've beat the crap out of the poor schedule. Here's who they've played recently. You know, they had the based on whatever metrics you looked at, they either had the worst or the 31st strength of schedule this year, only behind San Francisco. Here's a list of the recent quarterbacks they played: Brock Purdy, Josh Johnson, Daniel Jones, Davis Webb, Andy Dalton, Dak Prescott, Justin Fields. So you could have said any one of Mahomes, Burrow, or Allen would have been a massive step up for them based on who they've faced recently. I think anyone that would have come out of the AFC would have been probably the toughest opponent that their defense would have had to face and match up with. So that is a thing. Absolutely. I think they are stepping up here. it just feels like, and we'll talk out this a little more, and I've got some stuff on both sides, but it does feel like the Eagles have just way more ways they can win this game, I feel like. Right? Like if
And
it's like, oh,
also,
the Eagles can run, they can play, like if this is a low scoring game, if this is it, like if Mahomes isn't very, very good, the Chiefs aren't winning.
yeah.
That's it.
And
Like,
I'll say this, like, motivation is a real thing. And I think one of the big things here that, again, is not being talked about by the media, Sirianni was the wide receivers coach for the Chiefs. And when Reed came in, he didn't retain him. He let him go. And I know some guys in Philly, some guys that do some work for the Eagles, and they've openly told me, like, look,
little animosity there, huh?
Sirianni off. And one of the reasons why Sirianni went there is he wanted to be better at, you know what I mean? You know how Reed is one of the most, he wanted to take that away because he is pissed off about that. And I think that's one of the things that isn't being talked about enough, just because
I love that.
stuff like that is real. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
doesn't think you're good enough to do this. And you're kind of like, F you, dude, I'm good enough. I'm going to show you. You know what I mean? You get that little extra motivation to go after him.
So let's get some tidbits on both sides here. On the Eagles side, they play against San Francisco, and those injuries were just too much. Warner gets banged up on the third play of the game. Purdy, elbow injury, fumbles, gets hit. Backup Johnson comes into the game. Johnson, who's played on 8 different teams. He's had 10 different stints over the last 6 years. And he just was not good. You couldn't really expect him to be good. He gets sacked twice, 3 delay of game penalties. He loses a fumble, drops a perfect snap. Then he gets a head injury. They got to bring Purdy back into the game, and he literally can't even throw the ball more than a few yards down the field. They only had 164 total yards in that game, 3.6 yards per play, 11 total first downs on 10 total drives. McCaffrey was the emergency quarterback, and as Eric was pointing out, at one time it looked like they're almost getting him ready to go into the game, but you could see they didn't really have much of a scheme. This really good rushing attack, they only ran for 81 yards. Now, for the Eagles, Hurts passed for a season low 121 yards because he really didn't need to. The lack of offense for San Francisco, though, it forced them to be more aggressive, and they were sloppy. The 49ers had 11 penalties for 81 yards, and just like a lack of discipline. This is kind of what happens, though, Eric, right? Your defense will start to get frustrated when you know that your offense can't do anything. And you kind of try to do everything you can, and then a late hit comes in or a penalty, you start trying to do a little bit too much, right? You start trying to do more than you can because you know the offense is getting the ball and they're not able to move the ball at all down the field. Heck, the Eagles only had 269 total yards, and they got 7 first downs from penalty. That was the most in a playoff game in the last 20 years. The 49ers only gave up 33% third down conversions. It was just that lack of offense that killed them. 49ers had 3 turnovers, and they were 0-5 this year in games where they lost the turnover battle. For the Eagles, all 4 of their touchdowns against the 49ers were rushing touchdowns. They have now set an NFL record with 39 rushing touchdowns. It was the most since 1924, a team that you actually bet that year, Eric. You had the future on the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, I believe, to win it all.
I was heavily invested.
I think so. In old Frankfurt. And you know what? The issue this year has just been their health for Philly. Once, if we've seen Jalen Hurts be healthy, they've been good. They're 16-1 with him as their starter. And you talked about
with Hurts and Jordan Davis playing together.
Yeah. Just unbelievable stuff. They finished with a quarterback pressure rate. This is what you were getting at. Their rate, 62%. That was the highest in any Eagles game in the next-gen stats era dating back to 2016. The defense now has 78 sacks on the season. That's the 3rd most in NFL history. Only the 1984 and 1985 Bears have more. Like the legendary teams that we hear getting talked about, the 85 Bears. 5 sacks, the Eagles would break the all-time record. They averaged more than 4 sacks per game this year. And it's not fluky. They were first in pass rush wins and first in pass rush win rate. This defense is the first defense to allow 7 or fewer points in multiple playoff games since the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. And Hurts has 15 rushing touchdowns for the season. That's tied for the most in the NFL history for a quarterback in the single season. Reddick was awesome. He had a sack fumble on the first offensive possession for them, and his 19 and a half sacks this year in 19 games. He didn't make the playoffs during his first 5 years. You know, you talk about motivation again, Eric. That's another one, right? A guy like that who's a game changer, he's never even been on a big stage ever. He's never been on a big stage. Carolina and Arizona, and now he gets to go out there and go, oh, hey, I'm one of the best players in the league that probably nobody knew about. Like, you guys didn't know about me? I can make some stuff happen in here. They are just the 5th team in NFL history to win back-to-back playoff games by at least 21 points. The other 4 teams to do that all won the Super Bowl. That offensive line was fantastic against the San Francisco defensive front. They gave up just 5 combined pressures, not a single sack or a quarterback hit on 27 passing plays. And that secondary, they're going to be going up against Patrick Mahomes. They ranked first in forced incompletions and in interceptions during the year. They ranked 3rd in the league in 15-plus yard passes allowed, and they were 2nd in open target percentage. That is the best secondary in the league. They have a very strong 1-2 punch at wide receiver, and over the last 9 games, it's basically like number 1 wide receivers. Smith is averaging 8.8 targets per game, 81.6 receiving yards. Brown, 8.8 targets, 84.6 receiving yards. Both of them averaging 8.8 targets and both averaging over 81.5 receiving yards. Just really, really well-balanced stuff from top to bottom. Now let's flip to the Chiefs side. They are listed as a playoff underdog for the first time since 2015. Patrick Mahomes has never been an underdog in the playoffs in 13 games. In his career as an underdog in the regular season, 7-1-1 straight up, 6-3 against the spread. You talked about their health, though, Eric. Mahomes, Juju, Hardman, Tony, Kelsey, Snead, Willie Gay, all banged up. They had a little chip on their shoulder last week. They didn't love to hear all that Burrow head chatter, the mayor's taking shots at them. Mahomes wasn't the man. They loaded up. 4 sacks in the first half. They set the tone. They made the Bengals uncomfortable. In the first quarter, they posted a quarterback pressure percentage of 50%. That defense finished with 2 interceptions with 5 sacks. 4 of those first 8 dropbacks were sacks. And then they had the big one with 8 minutes, or in the big one with 41 seconds to go, 3rd and 8. And Jones comes up with a huge sack that gets the ball back to the Chiefs. Now they're headed to the Super Bowl for the 3rd time in the last 4 years. Chris Jones was incredible in that game against the Bengals. 4 tackles, 3 for loss, 2 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, 6 pressures. In the first meeting against the Bengals earlier this year, he only had 2 hurries on 37 pass rushing snaps. Against a banged-up Bengals offensive line, he destroyed them. And it was the defense for the Chiefs that came up big. The Bengals had the ball twice in the 4th quarter with the game tied and a chance to put the Bengals up, and the Chiefs defense got an interception and then a big sack. And Mahomes played through pain. He was 29 of 43, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. He accounted for like almost all of their net yards in the game because they couldn't run the ball at all, and everybody was banged up. He's the highest graded quarterback in the NFL since he came in 2018. He threw for a career high in passing yards this year, throwing 41 touchdowns to 11 different players, and he's 10-3 in the playoffs in his career. The penalties really hurt the Bengals. A couple of them were questionable penalties, but you know what? At the end of the game, there was a no doubt about it unnecessary roughness penalty that gave the Chiefs the yardage needed to attempt the game-winning field goal. They did benefit from what looked like a 3rd down where they got stopped. It was declared a non-play. The officials blew the play dead. It became like a weird 4th and then 5th down that everybody was talking about. Kelsey, he was the man for them again. 7 catches, 78 yards, 1 touchdown, meaning he has the 2nd most receiving yards in postseason history, and he is tied for 2nd in career playoff touchdowns all time. He's trailing Jerry Rice in both of them. I mean, they weren't fantastic, though, either. They had a chance at the end of the first half to score. They didn't. They opened the 3rd quarter with a drive and got nothing. They leaned on Valdez-Scantling. You never know who it's going to be to have a big game for you, right? It could be just different guys that step up. And because of attrition, it was Valdez-Scantling who had caught all 6 of his catchable targets, 116 yards. All 6 of his catches went for first downs, 5 first downs and a touchdown. And 73 of his yards came from passes 10 or more yards down the field. All 3 of the 20-plus yard completions went to him. This team couldn't run the ball. 27 yards on 15 carries for their running backs. They just, you cannot be one-dimensional like that against the Eagles. They will tee off on you with their really good secondary. Tony missed a pass in the end zone. They had another touchdown run taken away by holding. They let the Bengals go 90 yards for a field goal drive with no timeouts in the final 2 minutes before halftime. Those are the things that will kill you. Some of the weaknesses for their defense. They allowed the 3rd worst QBR to opposing quarterbacks in the league. In the red zone, they allowed a touchdown on 67% of their opponents' trips in the red zone. That ranked 31st in the league. And they were the only team among the bottom 6 in that metric to make the playoffs in red zone percentage touchdowns allowed. And the Eagles actually are 3rd in the red zone efficiency as far as scoring on over 67% of their red zone trips. So that could be a huge thing. Can the Chiefs get a stop or 2 in the red zone? Because the Eagles are very good in the red zone. For a team like the Chiefs, something that we point out when you make trades, when you have a quarterback like Mahomes, Eric, this is something that I really learned from talking with you. You need to be lucky. You need to be good in the draft. And they have been both of those. Look at just last week in the game, in the AFC title game, they got a nice return from Sky Moore, who's had an up and down year. They had a big game from Pacheco. Their rookie cornerbacks, McDuffie and Williams, had big contributions. And Karlaftis, who you and I have had fun butchering his name all year, he had a sack in that game. So you have rookies step up and contribute. If they don't get those contributions from them, they're not here, Eric, because they don't have a whole lot of wiggle room with Mahomes making as much money as he does.
Yeah, you got to be on point with everything, like you said, on the draft and everything. You can't afford to miss, because if you miss on the draft, it's just bad, because you can't afford once you pay these salaries. And the Eagles are going to be in this position because they're going to have to pay Hurts. Hurts is up pretty soon for a new contract.
Yep. You pointed out that the Chiefs rank 31st in DVOA against the wide receivers. And this could be just a massive game for either A.J. Brown or for Devontae Smith. So lots of tidbits both ways, Eric. Get into some of our plays. What are you diving into? How are you looking to play this game? And talk to us about some props that you might be looking at.
Well, first of all, let me show off my extraordinary math skills. Obviously, if the Chiefs are going to win, it's going to be Mahomes that's going to be the MVP, correct?
Yep.
Or maybe Kelsey.
Yes.
Those are pretty much the only 2 people. If
I
that's
agree.
the way you think, okay, let's say if you put $100 on Mahomes at plus 130, and if you put $13.53 on Kelsey at 16-1, you're walking away with $116 profit either way. So I mean, just looking at the math, that's one way we're doing. I obviously said I took the Eagles, the main thing being the trenches and everything. I'm not, that's just how I'm going to do. I think they have it with the playmakers, the trenches. I don't know how the Chiefs are going to get enough stops. My first bet, Eagles and Chiefs under 24.5. The last 17 years, the first half under is 11-5-1. That's 69% gets the number. It's hit 4 of the last 5 years. The Eagles are going to have long drives that will chew the clock. These teams do not want to lose the game in the first half. I expect it to be a very vanilla game plan with them not taking many chances, kind of having a filling out process. Both quarterbacks are banged up. And if we get to a scenario where the Chiefs like to run the ball, as I mentioned, with the tight ends being active, which we'll find out Saturday, I really like that even more. Connected to that, I put more points scored in the second half than the first half. You look historically in the Super Bowl, the most points are scored in the fourth quarter. Teams are willing to take a little bit more chances. And I like playing it like this than I do like taking the second half over. We saw when your Rams played the Patriots, it was like a 3-0 game. And then at half, then there was just one touchdown in the second half.
Yeah, which is more scored is great. It just gives you way more wiggle room.
Yeah,
way more wiggle room. Yes.
So I like playing that in the Super Bowl. So that's another one I locked in. I found this one on Bet Online. Eagles to have more sacks. I got all the way at plus 109. I really like that one just because we mentioned about the advantages they're going to have. I have the Chiefs 17 as my offensive line pass pro rankings. Eagles obviously the best defensive line in football. Multiple guys with double digit sacks. I think they're going to be able to get home. So I like the Eagles most sacks plus 109. I also locked in. I really feel that the Chiefs are going to lock in on Reddick because he had such a good game last game. And this is going to open stuff up for Hargrave and Sweat. Hargrave did have one sack last game, Sweat has 5 sacks in his last 5 games. I think they're both going to be able to get home. You can find those numbers at plus 125 and plus 150. Anything lower than plus 125, though, I wouldn't play. I think both those guys are going to be able to get home and get to Mahomes. Another one I did, will the opening kickoff be a touchback? I did this at no at plus 160. This one, a couple weeks ago on my live stream, I used to coach this kid named Reed. Reed played college, was a very successful college quarterback, and he gave this one out. 4 of the last 5 have been returned. When you look at the Eagles and the Chiefs, when you look at their touchback rate, it's not that high. Last night on my live stream, Dave Weaver made an interesting point too, because he had this one too. He said how he was listening to my least favorite guy in the world, Pat McAfee, and McAfee said how this isn't a normal ball. So normally in a kickoff, like if you're team A, I'm team B, I'm a kicker. I have my football and I can kind of like rough it up and get it the way I want it. You can do the same because you're on the opposite team when we kick off. The first kickoff, though, that ball goes in the Hall of Fame. So it doesn't have like the scruffing and everything. So that's why McAfee says we see more of these returned. I locked this in at plus 160. I like this in a
Look
little
at
bit
you,
earlier.
even taking some tidbits from the folks that you don't love. That's what I like about Eric. You won't discriminate.
My boy Reed, who was on my thing 2 weeks ago, he gave this one to me.
He led you to that. Okay.
This is what Weaver was saying last night when Weaver was on mine. The first half one, Jared McKinnon, longest rush under 8.5 yards. He has not hit a rush attempt go over this total since the Texans game on December 18th. In the last 4 games, we've seen Pacheco take over the early down work and McKinnon become the pass catching back. Since that game on December 18th against the Texans, McKinnon has 24 carries for 43 yards. That's less than 2 yards per carry. Also, CMC is coming back. That could easily mean a decrease in snaps and carries for
or CEH, right?
CEH.
I think you said CMC. Yeah.
That's going to lead to a decrease. That could lead to a decrease for McKinnon. Next one, I took my boy Devontae Smith. I took his over. I got this at 60. It's at 63 now. I would still take it. Devontae Smith, when you look at the slot wide receiver against the Chiefs last couple of weeks, boy, 2 targets, 2 receptions, 40 yards. He left the game early, went over his total. Kirk, 14 targets, 7 receptions, 52 yards. Went over his total. Renfro, 7 targets, 7 receptions, 63 yards, went over his total. In the last 3 games, 7.6 targets per game, 5.3 receptions, 51.6 yards. In pressure situations, people tend to lean on those they know / trust more. Hurts and Smith went to college together. I expect him to target it often. Plus, I mentioned Willie Snead. If Snead can't go, that means Joshua Williams is going to be playing in that slot cornerback position. That's really something they're going to look to take advantage of it. And the Chiefs also run a pass funnel system that basically means they take away the outside. They kind of funnel everything in the middle of the field. That's where Devontae Smith is going to be living. So I absolutely love him. We mentioned how the Chiefs are 31st DVOA against opponents' wide receiver runs. They have 2 rookies, McDuffie and Watson. They're going to be guarding A.J. Brown. I locked in Browns over 68.5 off of openers.
I'm heavy Brown too.
Yeah.
I'm heavy Brown props. I'm Brown first touchdown scorer. As we'll talk about with BTV on BTV this week, he's at plus 1,000 And he's one that I'll be throwing in. And I think he's very live. If you're looking for like an MVP, I wouldn't have a problem with him. I think if you're looking for more a non-traditional MVP, I'm okay with AJ Brown if you don't want to go with the quarterbacks either. Because it was sort of a quiet last couple of weeks for him. They haven't really needed him. He's the type of guy in these big games that he's just tough to tackle. I could see him busting through and breaking one open. Lots of AJ Browns for me too.
Yeah, so I took him over the 68.5 receiving. I wouldn't go over 75 though. 75.
No. Yeah, I agree.
And it's really hard. Like we kind of touched on it. It's kind of hard to judge just because they really haven't needed to use him to have anything to do anything. And then in terms of the MVP, I said it. I don't know why it is, but Jalen Hurts just gets no love from anybody. And we can all kind of see a scenario where it's somebody else. And I really think that one thing that kind of gets lost in this thing is the Chiefs has really been bad against the running back.
Sanders.
So what I'm going to do, this is kind of like where my head is. If I'm going to bet $100 on the MVP, I'm going to put 25 on Brown at 18-1. I'll put 25 on Sanders at 25-1. Then I'm going to put 25 on my boy, Devontae Smith, at 31-1. And then I'm going to look for long shots. I really think a long shot that has a little bit of a value is Kenneth Gainwell. We've seen him kind of like be the receiving back. If Sanders, who does have hamstring injuries, if he gets back, he's at 130-1. So if I throw $12 on him, and then I would look down and I would put Juju Smith-Schuster at 75-1. I mean that. No, not Juju. I'm sorry, Dallas Goedert at 60-1. Sorry,
Goddard. Yeah, Goddard. Also,
I mean that's kind of how I would do it. I would just kind of spread it out because I don't think they're going to give it to Hurts.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't get the kind of love that you're discussing. Couple things that I might be looking at, and we can kind of bounce these off. So heads is 1-4 of the 5 past coin flips. If you're the type of person that likes to play those things, orange Gatorade. I'm going orange Gatorade plus 250. It's been blue 3 of the last 4 years, but when the Chiefs won and Andy Reid, it was orange. So let's go back to orange at plus money at plus 250. Now, if you're a fan of either of these teams, since the spread is so close, like if you play the Chiefs to win by 7-12, so just the Chiefs by a touchdown, that's plus 550. Like if you like the Chiefs, that's a great way to get value at just winning by 7, winning by a touchdown, plus 550 on the Chiefs. Think about how rare it is to get a number like that ever. Now, this one's a little cute, but I actually like this one quite a bit. How many players will have a passing attempt in this game? I locked in the over
for that one. I couldn't find it anywhere. Where'd you find that?
I locked in the over at plus 175. I'll shoot you over 2.5 at plus 175. So I mapped this out, Eric. I'll send you the link where I played it. So we have the 2 quarterbacks, obviously. And then if either quarterback gets hurt, you already get it. You're already going to have another quarterback throw a pass. So right off the bat, we don't want to root for injury. But if Mahomes comes out of the game and if we have Henny throw a pass, there's 3. If Minshew has to come into the game and throw a pass, there's 3. But let's say the quarterbacks stay completely healthy. We have Kelsey, who has thrown 3 passes in his career. Tony has thrown 3 passes in his career. Townsend has thrown 3 passes in his career. McKinnon has thrown 3 passes in his career. Brett Kern has thrown 2. A.J. Brown has thrown 2. Zach Pascal has thrown 2. And Jake Elliott has thrown 1. So we even get fake, think about that, like a fake punt or a fake field goal. Anyone else to throw a pass besides our 2 quarterbacks, and we get plus 175. I like that one if you can find it out there. It was on, like you said, Eric, it was tough to find in a couple books. I found it in a few. Look around for how many players will have a passing attempt, plus 175 at over 2.5.
You got it. I gave that one out last year because I'm friends with a Rams scout, and he told me, he was like, dude, they're running the play with Beckham to roll to the left.
Yep.
because Beckham's left-handed. Obviously, Beckham went down, but we did hit it because Mixon did get that touchdown pass to T. Higgins.
Yep.
But then also Cooper Kupp did attempt the pass. So
So
I
I like that. People
Yeah.
get cute and you save your big stuff for the Super Bowl, right? If you've got something, you're going to pull it out in this game. Another one. Will either team go for a 2-point conversion? Plus 200 for yes. I mean, we know how Sirianni is. If this game is tight late, I could absolutely see him going for a win in a game. This year, these two teams combined to attempt 9 of them, and they converted 5 of them. Both teams are absolutely willing to go for it. So it's, will they complete a 2-point conversion plus the 200? I'm going for that one with aggressive coaches who, they both are sort of aggressive. And then some of my favorites, Eric. Okay, here we go. Rihanna to open the halftime show. I like yellow diamonds in the sky. Now we're standing side by side. We're going, we found love. We found love in a hopeless place. That is plus 700 because I think she's closing with Umbrella. I think that's the song that you close it out with. You can bring Jay-Z in the mix. You close it out with Umbrella, and then you can have all the props out. This has been one thing that has been good to me in handicapping these halftime shows, seeing on YouTube former concert sets and the order that they go, but in particular, songs that will include props. Those songs go on at the end because you don't want the props out there in the middle of all your transitions between songs. So if you're going to include a bunch of props, it's usually at the end. Umbrella is, one of the most popular songs that she has. When the sun shines, we'll shine together. Told you I'd be there forever. Everyone's going to be singing Ella, Ella, Ella. So we're opening with We Found Love. We're closing with Umbrella. She's going to open an Umbrella at some point for plus 275, and Jay-Z is going to appear for plus 300. I've got 4 on the halftime show.
You are heavy
on Rihanna in the halftime show.
I'm trying to think. God, what's that song? Oh my God. Shut Up and Drive.
Oh, Shut Up and Dance, or Shut Up and Dance, right? Is it Shut Up and, or Shut Up? That's like the third choice. So that's one of the top choices there too. And this is so much fun. Like there's not, the one that I'm surprised isn't really on the betting board very much is the one with Eminem, where I thought that would have been one that was a little bit more popular. There's a couple, Love the Way You Lie, Monster are few. Neither one of them are like on the betting boards quite a bit. I could absolutely see Eminem jumping out there in the mix at some point too. So if you can find that out there, I think M might be out there. Jay-Z, he was at the Laker game last night, so we know he's in the area, and he's got to be out there too. So I love having fun with the halftime show, Eric. Now tell us final thoughts, Eric. Give us anything else you have or anything else you want to mention about the big game.
Should be fun. Obviously over the last couple of years, I've really enjoyed getting to know you and talking shop and everything, with you, giving me this platform to grow and everything. So I really appreciate that. Really looking forward to a game. I would be careful though. I hear a lot of people talking about middling and trying to and everything. I would just be careful with that because when you just kind of look at the history of the Super Bowl, there's not been many games. I don't think there's been any that have finished on that 3. So, I just would be really careful.
Yep. Eric, man, it's been a blast. And Eric will be alongside me later this week talking at BTV Bets. We'll be talking all about this game. One thing I will tell all of you out there, find friends, find people in your life that you can talk about one game for 50 minutes. Like those are the type of people and those are the type of friends that you want in your life. It doesn't matter what you're interested in. If it's basketball, baseball, football, hockey, when you find people that you can sit down and talk to about one game for 45 minutes or an hour, that's fun. That's what it's all about. We can go back and forth on anything. And there aren't very many people that I can have a conversation like that with. Like with you, where we sit here and just go back and forth on one game. And we're going to be right some weeks. We're going to be wrong some weeks. But I hope the one thing you've learned from the both of us over the years is it's not easy and it takes a lot of work. There's no formula. There's no get rich quick scheme when it comes to this. It's just hard work and dedication. The more you put in, the smarter your wagers are, the sharper you become, the more you understand, the more you understand good numbers, bad numbers, the way things are going to move. I learned a heck of a lot from you, from talking with you, from watching some of your shows, and just from going back and forth. So again, a thank you as we put a bow on another really successful football season. And you know me, man. I'm not going to let you have any time off. We're going to go right into the NBA next week. We're going to start talking basketball and college basketball. So sorry about that, brother.
Hey, you know what? Hopefully, the grind never stops. Looking forward to it. Got some trade things.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this before we sign off. As looking at it as a Lakers fan, who would you rather have? Don't look at the whole trade package. Just have Kyrie or D'Lo.
Yeah, that's a good question. It solely 100% on the court, I would have said Kyrie, but with Kyrie comes all that baggage too, right? Like, do you trust Kyrie? If Kyrie in 2 weeks is like, oh, hey, by the way, like, I'm now like a converted Muslim, or I'm a converted like Jehovah's Witness. I'm going on a mission, right? Like, would that shock you if he did something like that? It wouldn't shock me.
I mean, we've talked about it about Kyrie. My biggest thing with Kyrie is you can't trust him. Like
No.
I think he's showing like, and don't get me wrong, like I'm from the belief like you can do whatever you want, you can say whatever you want as long as it's
absolutely
legal. As long as it's legal.
Me too. I don't care.
But you have to be willing to show up and you have to be there. I've gone on record. I'd rather have Garland. I think right now Garland is more reliable than him. But you look at his stats, he's playing lights out ball. But I just kind of think for what the Lakers have, I think D'Lo was a good get.
Really good fit.
In terms of the Mavs, they're going to be insanely fun offensively
and terrible defensively.
Utter nightmare on the defensive end.
They lost like those two guys that they gave up were two of like Dorian Finney-Smith was one of their like defensive keep everything together. And just think about that between him and Brunson last year, who's a little undersized, but still solid defensively. Last year, the Mavs were actually a good defensive team. And this year, they are not at all. They may be really difficult to stop, like you said, but as far as just, they could be a total turnstile. They're like, if they throw out lineups out there with Wood, Irving, and Luka, like those are guys you can just attack repeatedly. Yeah. And you know what? Now, I will say, the West is going to be a blast because for the next few weeks, Curry's hurt. We have no idea what's going to happen with them and how long he's going to be out. We don't know what kind of variable this throws into the mix. Now there are reports like that the Clippers might be a team going after Russell Westbrook, which would just be hilarious if he showed up for the Clippers, the Bulls, and the Heat.
They're going to buy him out.
They're going to buy him out.
The Bulls are rumored to be sellers. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. Just a real interesting time. And then I saw a thing like the Warriors save $131 million. I retweeted it of cap space if they trade Wiseman. Now, if I'm a younger team,
you take a swing. It's like a no.
Like the Magic. I wouldn't do if I was a Pistons. The Pistons got the kid from Memphis.
And you got the bigs. You got the big guys already, right?
They're like a younger team that wants to take a swing on a big. Just, you know what I mean? Like an OK City Thunder, because you don't know what you have with Holmgren. Like take a swing on him like that. I think that's kind of an interesting domino to fall, what the Suns are going to do. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I will say this. I think the team right now, some books have them at 8-1. They're the hottest team in the NBA. The Bucks to win a future at 8-1. Because right now, I don't see a team that can beat them. I will say this.
I don't think in a series still, because it's going to be the same thing for Boston.
I will say this. Like, I have no problem with Embiid this year. He's keeping his mouth shut and he's just playing basketball. And I actually think he's playing better basketball this year than he was last year. And it's amazing what happens when people just shut their mouth and do that. I think I'm a little disappointed with Luka, just because we talked about this last year. Luka was at that time in his development. Does he do what LeBron and Giannis did and just hit the gym and just be like, you know what I mean? Like built dudes that are reliable. The one thing about those guys is those two get physically beaten every single day when they go on the court, but they're there. Luka to me is still just not in shape, and he's not going to be in that echelon and player like the LeBron and Giannis until he takes that commitment in the gym, and I don't think he ever will.
Luka is one of those guys who my girlfriend's a Mavs fan, so we watch a lot of Mavs stuff, and she's from Dallas, and so we talk about Luka a lot, and it's so funny because he in a way that I love, and also like what you're saying, he doesn't give an F about anything, and that is sort of like why he's here, right? He has this unwavering confidence in himself. He thinks that people get on LeBron for his complaining, which some days is bad. But, for LeBron, he probably looked at it like, I'm one of the best players to ever play. I should get the benefit of the doubt on most calls. Luka feels the exact same way. Luka thinks every call is his, no doubt about it. And he will even talk about how he drinks beers on game days. He's even mentioned it before, and he's like stopped himself. He's been like, yeah, we had some pregame beer. Oh, like, he doesn't really care, but man, he is one of those Europeans. He's Vladi, like we've talked about. He would be smoking cigs at halftime if this was like 30 years ago. That's the kind of guy he would be, because he just knows that he's got those angles and the way he gets to his spots, and he is fantastic. So if Kyrie can take a little pressure off of him, man, this is going to be a lot of fun. And for a Lakers team who is like 14th right now in the West, they feel like they got a new little shot in the arm, at least with this trade. Like they feel like they have a second lease on life right now. Eric, I look forward to diving into everything going on in the NBA. I think in college basketball, there were like 12 of the top 25 teams that lost last week. It was just incredible parity, top to bottom. So feels like it's pretty wide open in both the NBA and the NCAA. We don't have that one real dominant team in either league right now. That's what makes it really fun for all of us bettors. So best of luck to everyone in the big game coming up this weekend. And then over the next few weeks, Eric and I will start talking college and NBA. Make sure to come hang out with us at BTV Bets every Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. Eric also does UFC previews over there at Better Than Vegas. I also am a part of the Mohawk Mania shows that we have. And Eric, tell us about the other podcasts that you have going.
My podcast comes out Friday tomorrow. We're going to talk. David and I will give our two best bets of the game. I'm supposed to have a new guest. He reached out to me. He said he wants to come on, talk some college basketball. So that could be happening. My boy Nick and I, we're going to tell you who to target in DFS. We did it last year. Last week, 3 players we're going to target, 3 players we're going to fade. That video is up on my YouTube channel. Some pretty in-depth stuff about some off-the-radar guys that you can kind of target, and a couple of guys looking to fade. And then, that's going to be it. And then NASCAR starts, and my boy Brandon, who is a professional iRacer, he comes on, and some of the stuff he spits is just insane. He knows these drivers. He told a story about how one of the drivers, one of the most popular ones, is on the website sugardaddy.com, which was hilarious.
Great. So entertaining stuff and informative as always over on Eric's shows. You get some great stories as well as those incredible gambling tidbits and insight. Looking forward to talking to you this weekend again, buddy. And then we'll start talking some basketball. Good luck to all of your plays. I hope you cash some of those big futures and put a nice bow on the season. Again, can't thank you enough for all your hard work this year.
Anytime, my man. Looking forward to next season.
You can hear Eric each and every week, and now we'll start talking some basketball next week right here